What's going on, guys? Marco here with Dynasty Nerds, and I am bringing you my 5 moves to make for Week 8. Before we jump into anything, I want to remind you, subscribe to this YouTube channel. We've got tons of content coming out each and every week, and the off-season content is looking exciting. We're planning all of that right now, so you are not going to want to miss out. So subscribe, hit the bell so you know everything that's happening. And if you want 15% off joining the Nerd Herd, use the link in the description below or use promo code 14P, the number 14P, and you will be able to get 15% off the extra podcast episode, personalized rankings, individual rankings by, analysts, things like that, and you will get access to tons of extra content. You are not going to want to miss out on this deal. 15% off. Use the link in the description below. Okay, so let's jump into it. Let's kick off with the most heartbreaking of news, and that is, of course, that Breece Hall has officially torn his ACL. He is done for the year. It's really a defeating week across the fantasy, landscape. We lost Breece Hall. Who knows? Officially with DK Metcalf, it looks like it wasn't super serious, but he might be missing some time. We're not sure yet there. Mike Williams had an injury as well. Amon-Ra St. Brown left with a concussion. There were tons and tons of things that were enormous letdowns in week 7. So I know there's a lot of teams, there's a lot of managers out there who are down bad this week, but I am here to help you to figure out what you are going to do specifically with Breece Hall. So if you're a contender, if you were a team that was just cruising to that championship matchup, or, in the top 4 is what I like to say. If you are a legit top 4 team in your league, that to me is what a contender team looks like, especially when you get to playoffs, injuries like this happen. So if you're a legit contender and you've got Breece Hall and he wasn't like your RB1 and you were just kind of filtering through RB2s, which is definitely possible. I do that in a lot of leagues, but it isn't a complete death blow to your team. What I would do is see what happens in the next week or two if you can fill that spot. And if you are still competing or really, really close to competing, then you make a trade and you trade away a guy like Breece Hall because he is probably the Dynasty RB1, maybe Dynasty RB2 once we see Bijan Robinson get onto the field. But he's not really an asset you want to trade away. That being said, if you are very reliant on Breece Hall for your team's success, there are a number of different trades that you would make. I have a team where losing Breece Hall definitely derails my team, but the rest of my team is built for winning, but I just have to have at least one running back that is going to carry me to that title and let me compete. So in a league where I have Breece Hall, it broke my heart. I traded him away in 2 leagues and I held him in another. So in the 2 leagues that I actually did move on from Breece Hall, heartbreak I know, I traded Breece Hall and a 2023 second round pick, and in return I got Josh Jacobs, Pat Freiermuth, and a 2025 second round pick. Now, that might not be the most exciting thing to you, but I was really needy at tight end. I got a running back who I think is a very talented running back who's finally getting the full workload in Josh Jacobs. And, I got that future pick. So that's a kind of deal I loved making. Another trade that was really interesting was I traded a Breece Hall, a 2024 first, for Saquon Barkley and a 2025 first. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to get that deal. I thought I was pretty lucky to get that deal. Saquon was just on a team that was basically floundering. He was really one of their only players who was doing too much this year. So I got that deal, and I was really excited. Of course, context matters here, league mates matter here, format matters here, scoring matters here. So drop your questions below with what your team or what you're thinking about doing with Breece Hall, and I'll get to everything I can. Also, don't forget to follow me and hit me up in the DMs on Twitter at Marco_14P. I'll get to everything there probably a little bit faster because I see those notifications a little bit faster. Okay, so my next move is for redraft and Dynasty because I can't forget about our redraft fans out there. But if you are a contender in Dynasty or if you're a redraft team that looks like you are, in the top 6 or higher, there are 3 Bears players that I was hyping up in the offseason, and I was way wrong on just what this team was going to do and what they were going to be able to do on offense, where they were going to kind of focus the offense. They're way more run heavy than I would have expected, but all 3 of these weapons have been seeing increases in value. Of course, this is being recorded before Monday Night Football, so I don't know what's going to happen in the Patriots-Bears game yet, but assuming they're all healthy, weeks 9, 10, and 11 line up really, really well for Justin Fields, Darnell Mooney, and Cole Kmet. Now, in redraft leagues, there's a chance Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney, honestly, and Justin Fields, if you're in 1 QB, are all available on waivers. Maybe not Darnell Mooney, but really, I think all 3 of these guys, especially because of bye weeks and all of the injuries we just saw, all 3 of these guys could fill in for a bye week, fill in for an injury, and help you get a win, weeks 9, 10, and 11 at the very least. In Dynasty leagues, Fields might not be super attainable, but Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet probably are. I don't know exactly. Again, so many different variables here. It's not as easy as just saying, go trade for them. But if you can go get Darnell Mooney for, a 2023 second, I don't think that that's a horrible move, unless it's an early 2023 seconds or projected to be. But if you're in like a middle of the road second round pick, I'm okay trading that if you're a contender, because he can come into your lineup and probably give you points and help you fill bye weeks or deal with injuries. Say DK Metcalf misses a couple weeks. Say Amon-Ra St. Brown misses, the next couple weeks. I think Darnell Mooney, Cole Kmet, and Justin Fields can help contenders or redraft leagues fill bye weeks, fill injuries, especially, like I said, weeks 9, 10, and 11. They have incredible schedules. And believe it or not, Justin Fields over the last, again, outside of Monday Night Football that I haven't seen yet, over the last 3 or 4 weeks here, Justin Fields has actually outscored Lamar Jackson by a good amount. So it's just one of those things where his rushing floor is helping him a lot, and it's probably going to continue doing that, especially in weeks 9, 10, and 11, because they play the Miami Dolphins, the Detroit Lions, and the Atlanta Falcons. Capitalize. The next thing I think you need to be doing in Dynasty and Redraft leagues is start checking the playoff schedule difficulty for your players. This is basically, week 8 is basically the first week I really start paying attention to this. Some people do it in the draft. Some people do it, week 2 or 3. I don't like to do that because you could end up losing and not even making the playoffs, and it won't really matter. But especially in Dynasty leagues, this is when you can go get a guy who maybe is falling into a lot of opportunity, like Michael Carter. Obviously, there's an asterisk there. We don't know if they bring someone in. But even Derrick Henry, Dameon Pierce, again, these guys aren't cheap, but those are 3 running backs that their playoff schedules look really nice. They have at least 2+ matchups when it comes to their playoff schedules. And when I look at wide receivers, Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, Drake London, they all have really nice playoff schedules. Drake London is probably more difficult to get in Dynasty because he's so young. So Mike Evans and Amari Cooper are kind of the guys I think you can get at a really solid price because they're older. So when you're in Dynasty, you're a contender. You're looking at the playoff matchups around week 8, 9, 10. You can go get these older guys on teams that are like, I'm kind of contending, but I'd rather go get the assets because I'm not going to be able to use Amari Cooper that much next year or in 2 years. And same with Mike Evans, and same with Derrick Henry and Michael Carter, all of these guys. So the 3 or the 6 players that I think are really solid for playoff matchups, if you're a contender right now, that you can get for varying difficulties are Michael Carter, Derrick Henry, Dameon Pierce, probably the most difficult, and then Amari Cooper, Mike Evans, and Drake London, again, probably the most difficult. If you've got questions, again, drop them below. Hit me up on Twitter at Marco_14P. The second to last move I think you need to be making in Dynasty leagues, rebuilding teams. Sell your healthy running backs to a contender and ask for a king's ransom. The weeks where people lose tons of players and they lose a big name player like Breece Hall, or they've lost recently, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, that's when you can, as a rebuilding team, sell your healthy running backs, because everyone wants them, for a lot more than they're worth. Of course, context matters here. What does your draft capital look like? What does your running back room look like? If it's your only running back and it's a young player, maybe don't sell them. But in most situations, I am fine selling your healthy, producing running backs for an absolute haul, whether that be young wide receivers and draft picks, whether that be a young running back, or some combination of wide receiver, quarterback, wide receiver, draft pick. To me, when you are a rebuilding team, the number one non-draft pick asset that I'm typically acquiring, unless it's super flex, of course, is wide receivers, young wide receivers, Brandon Ayuk's, Devonta Smith's. And I don't know how cheap you can actually get these guys, but they're guys who are really, really talented. And they're starting to see a lot more work. I think both right now are in that conversation for top 20 wide receivers, and they're not 100% really being valued like that in Dynasty. Devonta Smith might be a little bit of a different category than Brandon Ayuk, of course. But Brandon Ayuk right now in points per game is giving you top 20 wide receiver numbers. And so he's a guy I love buying. Ultimately, there's, again, with all trades, there's tons of context that I don't have for your league. I'm happy to help you out with those in the number of ways you can reach me. But make sure that if you're a rebuilding team, you're not just letting a Saquon Barkley. You're not just letting a Dalvin Cook. You're not just letting a Leonard Fournette. Those types of running backs sit on your roster without having any sort of conversation of what it looks like to improve your team by moving them off of your roster. Okay, my final move to make, and this is for redraft and dynasty, no matter which one you are playing, no matter which one you are looking for advice on. Here is 4 players I am okay with you dropping in both formats. There's a little bit of context here, but let me give them to you. Number 1 is Kadarius Toney, and while, if we're being honest, in redraft, you probably dropped him a long time ago or he's sitting on your IR. Wan'Dale Robinson is the better version of Kadarius Toney. We're not really sure what's going on with Toney right now. I don't know if it's truly an injury that's keeping him off the field. I don't know if it's some of the off the field stuff that he was just constantly getting into before the season, heck, before last season. But the reality is Kadarius Toney is likely not a dynasty asset. I'm okay dropping or trading him. If there's a manager in your league that believes in him, trade him for almost anything. Seriously, like a third round pick, a couple third round picks, a third round pick, depending if it's, 2023. So Kadarius Toney is a guy I've been selling for a long time, and officially it's okay to drop him, and I don't think you're losing much at this point. The next one, it hurts because I just recently talked about how I thought he was going to be a flex option, but it's Romeo Doubs. I saw Romeo Doubs play. I'm a Bears fan, so the Packers are pretty much at the forefront of our minds all the time. But I saw Romeo Doubs play, and he's shown flashes of really, really nice play. But what he's also shown us is that when he gets the top corner, when he gets the top defender, he is struggling to keep up. Last week, he saw 4 targets, and he gave you absolutely 0 fantasy points. It was one of the lower target totals of his entire season. And what Romeo Doubs needs more than anything is for the Packers to get a wide receiver 1. If they get a wide receiver 1, Romeo Doubs is probably going to give you flex upside, but are we waiting for that? If you need a roster spot in redraft leagues, in dynasty leagues, I'm okay moving on from Romeo Doubs. Dynasty leagues, if you want to wait a week or 2 to see if anything happens, I totally understand that if you've got the availability on your team, whether it be bench or you can add people late to your taxi squad, that's fine. But if you need the roster spot and he is just basically holding a spot for you and you're waiting for a breakout or you're waiting for them to add someone else, I'm fine dropping Romeo Doubs. The third guy I am okay dropping in dynasty and redraft leagues is Robert Woods. Everyone was thinking, he's probably going to be the de facto 1 guy. Traylon Burks goes out. He's probably going to be the de facto 1 guy. He realistically has 3 matchups the rest of the season that he would be okay to throw out there as a dart throw and see what happens. But he isn't who he used to be. The Titans offense is just absolutely disgusting. The only one you're even mildly happy about is Derrick Henry, and if it's not Derrick Henry, it's no one. Not even in Superflex leagues is Ryan Tannehill giving you value. So Robert Woods is fine to drop. If someone, like a contender, wants someone to throw on their bench to help them just in case injuries hit, sell them for a third. Sell them for a future third. Sell them for a fourth. It depends how many rookie draft rounds you have, but Robert Woods shouldn't be on your team, I don't think, in Dynasty or in Redraft, especially if you're in like a 10 or 12 person league. Anything, that range, there's really no reason to have him on your team. He's a roster clogger, and that's it. The last guy I'm okay with you dropping in Redraft and in Dynasty leagues is James Robinson. He saw 17% of snaps last week. He saw 0 touches, 1 target. Ultimately, what we're seeing in James Robinson is the Achilles injury has caught up to him. It's unfortunate. I like the guy. I like the player. It's just, this is what a lot of people were saying in the offseason is Achilles injuries are no joke. Like you just don't see players come back to who they were. And he had that for a moment, but it's just not sustainable. Travis Etienne looks explosive. Absolutely explosive, and he dominated touches. Sure, he might not see 80% of touches going forward, but he's likely to see 60, 65% of touches, and that's enough for me to say that James Robinson is a low end handcuff because when he's on the field, he's inefficient. So James Robinson in redraft leagues, if you need the spot, drop him. If there's someone who's like, hey, great, I've got Travis Etienne and I'll take him, great. Trade him and see what you can get back. Dynasty leagues, kind of the same situation. If you can go get, there's managers who probably still believe in him, and especially a Travis Etienne manager who's maybe looking for a handcuff, go trade James Robinson. See if you can get like a 2024 second or, a handful of thirds. Maybe you can get a 2023 second if the guy's really desperate and looking to shore up his running back depth. Those are the kinds of moves I'm okay making. But again, if you can't get any of that, I think you can drop him and not really be that upset about what you're missing out on or the potential of what you're missing out on. All right, guys, well, that is it for me. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Marco_14P. Drop your questions below. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Join the Nerd Herd. Use the link in the description below. Be kind, do good, and I'll see you next time. Peace.